I'm Sandrine. I was diagnosed with colon cancer when I was 37 years old. That's 15 years ago. The way they found out I had colon cancer, I had suspected appendicitis. It turned out that actually the tumour in the colon was actually sitting on the whatever it's called. And that's how the, what is it called? Appendix. The appendix was actually inflamed because of the tumour sitting on it. So I had a major operation. They took away 50 centimetres of my right colon. And after that major operation, I had to have 6 months of adjuvant chemotherapy. That means that you don't actually lose your hair with that type of chemo. However, I had lots of side effects. I was having chemo on a weekly basis, and my vein, it really affected my hands. So even these days in the winter, I get really terrible hands to the point that they're bleeding. So I've really got to look after them. That was one of the major side effects of that chemo. I haven't had really major problems recovering from that cancer. I was followed for, I think it was 10 years and eventually discharged. When I was diagnosed, I used to, the first time when they told me, I sort of knew before I got the result of the biopsy, because the surgeon and the gastroenterologist had many years of experience, and just talking to them I could tell that they knew that it was cancer. So I wasn't really surprised when I got it. But because I was 37, my son was only 5, it was quite scary because I always wanted another child. And because normally colon cancer is something that happened when you're 70, nobody could really tell me what effect the chemotherapy would have on me or in me in terms of fertility. And I always wanted a second child. So so that was quite scary, because the first time I had chemotherapy, the nurse had just put in the intravenous in, the drug was going through, and I had this terrible sort of feeling in my mouth and it was it's when the nurse sort of passed the comment, oh, by the way, do you know that you might go in early menopause? And it was so unhelpful, because nobody had really talked to me about it. So it was quite a shock, really, that I'd not been warned and prepared about that. But I just thought to myself, well, you know, I'm determined to have another child, so, you know, I'm just not going to take on board what she said. And so that's what I did. Anyway, to cut a long story short, they had told me, or maybe I researched it, I'm not sure they told me actually, but I had Duke C, so it's a stage 3 of colon cancer, and the chance of surviving after 5 years was 40%. So from the onset, I decided that I was going to be one of the 4 surviving, which I did. And then eventually I got discharged. And as I said before, I recovered very well. I haven't had really any problems with what I eat or anything. I've really been really fortunate in that respect. So everything was honky-dory. And then in 2003, one evening, I just took my bra off and discovered that I had a sort of, it felt like something really hard in my right breast, and it looked red as well, and it was painful, a bit like pains you get before you having your periods. We were going on holiday, our first family holiday in 5 years, 5 days later, and I was determined that nothing was going to prevent that. So it was a Friday evening, as always, and I phoned the out-of-hours doctor, and I saw a GP in Wickham Hospital the next morning. But unfortunately, she couldn't do anything, and told me to go and see my own GP on the Monday if he carried on. So I decided to take myself to A&E in Stoke Mandeville, to sort of, because of time pressure, because of flying to Menorca the following Wednesday. And there, a doctor was absolutely amazing. She really understood the urgency, and she really, despite it was a Saturday, she managed to pull a few strings. So I had a biopsy eventually, I think on the Monday, and an ultrasound to see whether it was a cyst or something else, and they did confirm it wasn't a cyst. And I by then I sort of knew. I think when you've had cancer once, you sort of learn to look at how the medical professionals sort of deal with it, and usually when they act very speedily, it's usually not good news. So anyway, on the Monday, she had the results and said to me, how would you feel about cancelling your holiday? And I said, no way, I am going whatever may. So she actually managed to get me an appointment with a breast surgeon, which was a miracle. So I went to see him on a Tuesday, and he said, well, there's no point doing a biopsy because that's going to spoil your holidays if you want to swim and everything. We'll do a mammogram and all the rest of it when you come back from a holiday. We'll have it all organised. So I went away knowing in the back of my mind that, it could be cancer again, which was completely unrelated to the first one, which in a way was amazing, but on the other end thinking, oh my goodness, here we go again. Anyway, but this time, it was a completely different experience because they are a lot more geared for the patient. You're not a number anymore. They very much, they look at you as a person with emotions, and at your family as well. And we've been made so welcome at the Sunrise unit in Wickham. They are really amazing. They just, they provide everything. You go for chemo, they lay out lunch for you. They are alternative therapists there. So you can have massage, you can have reflexology, you can have all sorts of things. Even when you having the chemotherapy treatment, which is quite amazing. I remember one therapist approaching me and while I was at treatment and saying, well, one of my clinicians hasn't turned up, can I do your feet? And that was wonderful. So to cut a long story short, I had chemotherapy. This time I lost my hair, which was quite daunting and definitely a new experience. And then I had then I discovered that I had a precancerous condition in the other breast, at which point I said, just take both of them away, you might as well. And in a way, because I'd been big busted all my life, it was such a relief that it was good. It was good news to me. So double mastectomy, and then once I've recovered from that, I had a 15 session of radiotherapy at the Churchill Hospital in Oxford. So that was that. What I found was that I was diagnosed on the 2nd of September 2013, and I finished radiotherapy 1st of July 2014. And every week I had contact with the medical profession. I had 24/7 access to them if there was a problem. I felt really supported and cared for until the 1st of July, when they said to me, your treatment is finished, well done. Now, any problem, go back to your GP. And as much as I respect my GP and really appreciate her, she's not a cancer specialist. Therefore, it was a bit daunting to all of a sudden being released in the big wide world with no safety net. Consequently, because I was physically, emotionally, completely depleted, I ended up having a severe depression with suicidal thoughts and all the rest of it. Eventually got some help from Healthy Mind. I went on a course about mindfulness, and that really, really helped. And I remember it was a 6-week course, a weekly one, and it was my lifeline, just going there every week. And the first course, they got me to fill a questionnaire how I felt, and I felt suicidal to the point that they actually challenged me about it, to ask me whether I was actually safe to go home. But by the 6th course, I was sort of more or less back to myself, able to function and cope with daily life, which was lovely. But it took me probably, I would say, at least 2 years after that to sort of build up my confidence again and get used to, I suppose, the new body image and just the tiredness, because the chemotherapy really affected me, and even these days, quite often I take myself for a nap in the afternoon because I'm just exhausted. So I think physically you will never be the same. Chemo it is poison that is, fed into you, and it has got long-term consequences that you might not realise at the beginning, but obviously we're aging as well, and it is difficult to cope with in some respect, and you've got to sort of adjust and realise that's something you used to be doing, like walking 10k or whatever. Well, you can't do anymore. You might just be able to do 5k before being exhausted. So it's a learning curve, really. In terms of therapy, I've already mentioned, it was lovely to be able to have massages and reflexology on the ward during the cancer treatment, because it sort of made you feel cared for and looked after, really. So that was lovely, and I've actually got a friend who's a reflexologist that I used after that privately. We then went to a sort of long weekend for Valentine, for my husband and my 2 sons, on the border of Dartmoor, and there was a spa there. So I actually There was sort of jacuzzi, and there was all the rest, and also treatments that you could pay for. So I really enjoyed swimming there, and the spa and the sauna and everything, and nobody really asked questions about my health about that. So I used the spa and everything with nobody querying anything. But when he came to I think I'd chosen reflexology from what I remember. I booked it, I paid for it, and I turned up for the treatment really looking forward to it. And basically I was taken into the room, and she asked me to sit down, and she went through my form and said, well, unfortunately, because you've had cancer in the last 3 years, I cannot go ahead with your treatment today. And I was really disappointed because I even had reflexology while I was having chemotherapy. So it just didn't make any sense. But she explained that it was a way of covering themselves against any legal issues. If something was, a lady was affected badly while having treatment or afterwards, I guess. But that was really disappointing, and I actually came back and talked to the therapist on the Sunrise unit afterwards to sort of query, well, what was that all about? And there didn't seem to be any medical reason. It was just this specific spa sort of covering themselves against any possible claims that client might have if they didn't feel very well after the treatment or whatever, or the cancer came back or whatever, which is a myth anyway. So that was really quite disappointing at the time. They did give me my money back, obviously, but that wasn't the point. It sort of spoiled the sort of a little bit of the weekend, I suppose, because he sort of reminded me, of the cancer, which I was trying to forget. So, it was defeating the object a bit, really. However, for my 50th birthday last year, my girlfriends clubbed together to send me to John Lewis spa in the Odney Club in Cookham, and off I went. And it never actually crossed my mind that I would yet again have to declare my 2 cancers and the rest of it. And I think I purposely lied on the form and didn't tell them because I didn't want to be turned down. I was looking at, I had a full body massage that day, and I was really looking forward to it, and I don't think I was prepared to be disappointed again. So I just purposely lied, and I had a wonderful time, and I survived it. And I'm still alive today, so here we go. So yeah, it is a shame that you've got to come to that extent of being lying because you've been put off before by other spas, basically. So I'm really keen for those sort of negative experience not to happen in the future, because they are completely counterproductive, basically. Because the idea of going to a spa is to make you feel better about yourself and forget about your circumstances and illnesses, and to be reminded and told that you can't actually have the treatment. It really is not nice, and they can't justify it in terms of medically anyway.